Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA-USA. IPA-USA is an affiliate of the International Play Association. You can find more about IPA World at ipaworld.org and about IPA-USA at ipa-usa.org. As part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, and these are conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. You can find the Porch Play Chats on our website under Advocacy, on our YouTube channel where you can subscribe, and on our Facebook page where you can subscribe, and magically every Monday, a new Porch Play Chat appears in your feed. Joining me today on the porch is Marcy Guddemi. Marcy is a board member of NAYC and has been an advocate for play for a very long time. She's still very young though. Marcy is widely recognized as an expert in early childhood learning through play and developmental assessment, promoting developmentally appropriate practice from birth to grade 3. She has been her lifelong learning and vocation. As a former CEO and executive director of the Gesell Institute of Child Development on the Yale campus, Marcy passionately led the Institute from 2007 to 2015 in its mission of promoting the principles of child development in all decision-making for young children worldwide. She earned her PhD in early childhood curriculum and instruction at the University of Texas at Austin, an MBA from Golden State University in San Francisco. And where did you get your PhD, Marcy?
University of Texas at Austin.
At Austin, there we go. So another important topic about the importance of play that Marcy's going to discuss with us today is why play can prevent violent acts. And so Marcy, why do we want to talk about this relationship between violence and the play of young children?
Well, you know, the latest school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, just, you know, set me over the edge because I know we as a society could prevent some of that violence with young children, you know, with good quality early childhood education. But, you know, specifically, or to add to, you know, just that notion of what I just said, I've been reading these articles in the New York Times and everybody's talking about them. And, you know, there's a lot in there about you know, these adolescents that are really committing these crimes. And 6 out of the last 9 school shootings were of children under 21. And, you know, the whole research on how the brain develops and that adolescent brain is just amazing. And it's very eye-opening because, again, what happens during early childhood provides the foundation for that adolescent brain. But I also, you know, thought about the work of Stuart Brown, which is, you know, one of our favorite, you know, IPA people, and he has his own, National Institute for Play in California. But his research in particular, and I think his research in particular struck home with me because he studied the criminals, and specifically serial killers, criminals. And one of the first mass shootings in the United States was at the University of Texas at Austin. Yeah. And so when I used to walk, I mean, you know, down the street and look up at that big tower at UT Austin and think somebody stood up there and just shot people, you know, walking on the main street there, I think it's Guadalupe, just walking on that street. And again, you know, how this is escalated. I think that was back in the 70s that shooting actually happened. It's just, like I said, it's just so sad and so weird. But he's done the research, and what he found with those criminal and serial killers is that they all had some type of traumatic experience during early childhood. And there's a, you know, and of course there's been subsequent research to look at what's going on. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But, when you look at what happened during early childhood, that gives you, again, validation of how important those early years are. And for full development and full brain development and again, what happens with developing executive functioning and self-regulation during those early years, we've got to do a better job on or what we can work on, which is prevention. And quality early childhood programs will definitely help. It's not going to solve every ill or every problem in the world, and every child's not going to get, the best they could, but we've got to do better to strive to make sure they do get the best that they can.
Well, Marcy, what I keep thinking about is, was it Peter Gray or was it Stuart Brown that talked about the play deficit, and that these murderers that were in prison when they did their research really brought to bear the deficit they had in being able to have child-initiated play. And I can't remember if it was Peter Gray or Stuart Brown, but one of them did the research on that and really identified that when children do not have access to this open-ended child-initiated play, that is harmful to the way their brain is making those learning connections. And then the other thing I always think about is Bruce Perry and Oprah's latest book, What Happened to You, right? Instead of, why did you do that? It's really the question that you should always ask is what happened, right? Because it is those traumatic experiences that somehow, well, we know how, are restructuring the way the brain should be created.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's one article that I read again just recently said that we shouldn't talk about why they did it, what was the motive, because it's not the motive of right now. It has been building, all these years. And, I think that it's not just that they didn't have play. That happened during, the early years. And again, the research on brain development is so critical that it's during those preschool years when this self-regulation has its full potential to develop. So you miss that period. Then you go to school and nobody plays with you on the playground, and you start getting bullied. And then the pandemic, of course, has also added another layer of isolation and helplessness to these children who already, are having, all these feelings building up. So it's not just why they did it that day. It's again, this huge buildup. And again, it's preventable. That's the thing that is, we talk about vaccines for, the pandemic, which believe me are good, but, there's so much more we could do in this area of quality preschool and quality early childhood experiences. So that's the reason I really wanted to, talk about this topic.
And so can we get down to the nuts and bolts? So in a classroom of 3-year-olds or in a classroom of toddlers or in a classroom of infants. Oh, I mean, really, we need to start there too, as well as what happens prenatally to them based on the experiences, right? But in a classroom of infants or in a classroom of toddlers or in a classroom of preschoolers, when they're doing typical behavior, biting, hitting, doing what they do because they don't have the self-regulation, how can teachers support children, not putting them in timeout, not doing any sort of punishment other than, and this is what I did when I was a teacher, oh my goodness, look at the tears, we have to get tissues, oh, they're crying so hard, that really hurt them, helping them sort of hopefully understand how the other person is feeling.
Well, it's incremental, and it's the child is learning. And again, going back to brain development, it doesn't happen all at once. You know, I like to talk about brain, or use this as my analogy. You know, it's like building a brick wall. There's all these different bricks that have to be, you know, laid in there, you know, to finally get to, you know, the goal that you're working towards. So, you know, when you first started asking the question, you know, what can we do? We have to have well-trained teachers. I mean, what I found, and again, I used to be in teacher education at several different universities. And what I found is that these students, you know, these future teachers, they bring to the table the way they were brought up. So if corporal punishment was part of their upbringing, it's harder, and it takes more time as the educator of teachers, or teacher preparation educators, you know, to get them to understand and to grow. But when I used to supervise the student teachers, and again, you know, watching other teachers in these schools, they want control. They want perfect silence. And, you know, the goal, and that's more, well, no, actually that, I was going to say that's more the goal of elementary education classrooms, but I see it in early childhood. I mean, I was at the Y just the other day, because I swim, my laps, and the kids were, you know, camp kids, you know, that are there for childcare at the YMCA. No talking in the hallway. Everyone stay close to the wall, no talking. And the first thought I had is, you know, control. And these kids are under this control all the time. So to answer your question, it's good teacher preparation programs, and it's hard work for us teacher educators because of the, I'm going to say, baggage that these young future teachers bring with them. So it's a real challenge, but it can be done. And, you know, and I know you were as well a great teacher, but, you know, when I see some of these teachers that are truly, you know, high quality teachers, I think everybody could be that way. You know, they know what to do. They know those little tricks like, well, let's get the tissue, or, you know, the discussions that you need to have to get them to. And then the other thing that I thought of is the expectations. You know, a 3-year-old does not share. Okay, that's just the way it is. And you know, a toddler some will really bite. I mean, that's just child development. So again, for both teachers and parents to understand, you know, what the stages of development are. That's what Gesell Institute was all about, is really understanding that children go through very predictable stages. And as teachers and parents, we go with the flow, and we, you know, do those techniques to get them through that. But, you know, these shooters, you know, I'm going to focus just on the shooters, you know, not the other criminals out there. But when Stuart Brown studied all types of criminals, as well as he also included looking at very highly successful people, like Tiger Woods is one of his examples, that the quality early childhood led to good outcomes, and the poor quality early childhoods led to, you know, in these cases, you know, very severe outcomes. So again, really understanding child development as part of the teacher preparation program, and as well as parent education.
When I teach child development, and so when on the very first day of class, we do, you know, 4 corners and all sorts of active experiences to kind of get them up and moving and everything. And I'm asking them questions about child development. You know, what is the age span for child development? What's the most important thing that a teacher can do with infants? And there's all these questions, all these answers around the room. They have to go to their corners. And after we've gone through this series of 10 or 12 questions that really focus on the importance of understanding child development, then I say, this is the most important class you'll ever take. And then I looked at them, are you interested? And they're like, yes, what are we going to learn tomorrow? You know, it's just, I think people think, oh, child development, we've known about that forever, blah, 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 blah. But they don't understand the critical nature of understanding that developmental piece and recognizing that everybody's development path is different. It
Right.
happens in a sequence.
And
You
it
can
happens
expect
at
some
different times.
but
Sometimes.
it's the most important thing that an educator needs to understand.
I
And
agree.
and so I think that getting them excited about learning about child development. I had a student this last semester who said, I've been teaching for 15 years. How come I didn't know any of this stuff? And I said, had you ever taken child development? And she said, no. And I said, that's why you didn't know it. I said, that's why coming back to school is so important. And it's helping people recognize the baggage. I mean, I still have baggage. I mean, there are thoughts, Marcy, I'm old. There are I'm out in public and I'm in a situation, and there is this awful thing that flashes through my head, and I'm so embarrassed about where I thought I dealt with that, right? I thought I dealt with that bias, that implicit bias that I had. And it's because it's so ingrained
Yeah, no, it
in our
takes work. It
culture
takes
and in our
effort.
childhood.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a constant, battle. And sometimes I just turn purple because I'm so embarrassed that those things are still flashing through. So for teachers who may not have done the decades of work that you and I have done, for teachers, it is an obstacle that they really need to face head on.
Yeah, no,
That
that's a really good insight for us as, teacher educators, or parent educators or all of us to understand that, yeah, it's a constant struggle to not do the control, but to, the techniques that we need to do to get past that. But it can be done. And that's the thing. It can be done. Sorry.
no, that's right.
I should turn this off, I guess. Anyway, yeah, no, it's a constant struggle, but it can be done. And I often have said that every and I say junior high student should take a child development and family living course. I have one of my college roommates that was one. She taught home economics in a high school, and that was her favorite course to teach because these kids, and a lot of, teenagers become pregnant. So, you've got to get knowledge, or you got to get exposed to what is good early childhood and child development before. But coming back
And so
to,
yes, I was going to say, coming back to what can teachers do? Let's say we know we want them to go back to school and take good quality early childhood courses that include child development. But
right,
in the classroom with infants, I always tell people you have to build that baby's trust with you. They have to know that people will come when they need them. They're crying for a reason, figure it out. I go back to Magna Gerber. I don't know what's wrong with you, but I want to help you. I
yes,
just
yes,
love her approach.
that calming voice makes the infant feel better. But how many parents let them cry it out? My mom taught me that you just let them cry it out. I mean, it just breaks my heart when I see parents do this because and then I've got to bring this in, the children being in front of screens.
Oh boy, please,
Parent
Marcy.
that just gives the child the telephone in the crib, practically, in I mean, before they can, in the high chair, before they can walk, they're playing with phones, and that constant bombardment of what's on the media or in media as they get older. And again, what I was reading this week, they're saying that these adolescents are seeing, and it's mainly boys.
Violent.
interesting.
Yeah.
But this violent stuff, and you know, one of the games that they play is active school shooter. I mean,
know.
how bad is that for their development and for contributing to the issue that we're dealing with instead of helping to you know, to mitigate it and to, you know, take it, well, prevent it. I just got to keep going back to prevention. Just like dental, you know, you prevent cavities by brushing your teeth, flossing, blah, blah, blah. We can prevent some of this violent behavior by helping them play. And this is the other thing, you know, screens is one reason children aren't playing.
Right.
Parents are also another reason they're not playing, because they just don't, you know, they don't want them to play. They want them to be quiet, you know, get out of my mind, you know, or get out of my
And
head.
don't want them to be, and they don't want them to go outside because they're afraid they're going to be kidnapped, right? So
Yeah,
there's fear in there too.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear, all of that. But, you know, parents can help by, again, you know, this playing. But one of the schools definitely can do more. I want to say two things about schools. One is in the early years right now, preschool included, it's overly academic, and the teachers, and this is the second point, administrators don't know what's best for young children during those early years. I mean, one of the things IPA has been doing for years is promoting the child's right to recess, you know, the right to play. And actually, I kind of like to talk about that for just a second, because that is who we are, you know, the American Association for the Child's Right to Play. That the United Nations guaranteed that right to play. And they've done it subsequently through the years. I mean, starting back in the early 1900s was the very first mention of you know, this right that children have to play. But the latest one, which sadly is 1980, so that's over 50 years ago, no, over 40 years ago now, that the 1980 Convention on the Rights of the Young Child from the United Nations was ratified by all the countries around the world except for the United States.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about gun control, and I don't want to talk about abortion or anything like that, because when do the rights of the child start? But what I do want to say is other countries have so few mass shootings. I gotta find my statistic here, but in America, we have 73% of the mass shootings. And the next largest country, which is France, has 5.7. What is wrong with that picture? And we know other controlling factors of what's wrong, but the major factor, which again is what I want to talk about, is that children have the right to play. And play is so beneficial. I mean, for so many reasons, you know, what we're talking about with preventing violence and, you know, helping children go through the stages of development. But when we look at what we really want, you know, for young, actually, let me say this. This is a little activity I used to do in my child development classes. And I also taught classes, you know, just focusing on play, learning through play. But usually a child development class, I would start one of the early sessions with, well, what kind of person do you want as your neighbor? Okay. And I would write up on the whiteboard or chalkboard or whatever, everything they said, you know, and they would say, I want them to be kind. I want them to be responsible. I want them to, you know, be tidy. I want them to, you know, all these characteristics, you know, that I can think of. And then maybe somebody would say, well, I want them to be able to read so that they know they can follow, you know, laws and read the newspaper or whatever. But out of like 40 different characteristics that I write on the board, only 2 are on reading and math skills. So when we think about what we're doing in education, we focus everything on the academics and not the what they call soft skills. I'd rather not call them soft skills, but call them the essential skills.
Essential skills. I think we need to change that terminology, Marcy. Yeah, it needs to be the essential skills of being able to regulate your emotions and regulate your body and regulate. And, you know, one of the things that I think that's a great exercise to do with students in a child development class. One of the other things that I feel like, you know, they want children, well, I have several, but one is they feel pressure because they don't understand how to explain how play helps children gain academic skills for later in their life, right? And that's almost the language we need to give them. So when I was a director, you know, I'd have parents that come in with 3-year-olds, tell me when they're going to learn to read. And I'd say when they're ready.
Good answer.
And, you know, tell me when they're going to write their name, you know, when they're ready. And then after like 4 or 5 times of when they're ready, I'd say our program helps children develop the prerequisites that they need to be successful academically later in life. Absolutely. And the parents never questioned me after that. We played all the time, never questioned, because I said, we're giving them the prerequisites they need, the building blocks they need.
Right.
And so sometimes I think we need to give that language
Absolutely.
to educators, so that when families come and say, well, why aren't you sending home worksheets? And I would just confront families and I would say, did you do worksheets in kindergarten and first grade? Yes. Did you like them?
Yeah.
Oh, no, not really. It was kind of boring. I said, so well, see, we don't do those.
That's the baggage that we're talking about. They think that's the way it should be done, and that's the way it was done to them, but they didn't like it. And again, I think we can do a better job. Again, you know, I mentioned administrators definitely need a course in child development, and I can't think of the guy's name up in I think he's at the University of Chicago, that's been working with providing early childhood training for administrators. And the success that he's had is, I mean, so the research is there. Everything, you know, you and I are saying right now, the research is there to show that that's what we need. And we just have to, again, we can prevent these, you know, acts of violence if we would allow them to play. And yes, children learn to play. The other thing I always like to talk about is that there's so many different forms of play. You know, I was a physical educator initially before I got into early childhood education. And, you know, the physical joy of, you know, active physical play is just one teeny tiny portion of play. And there's all kinds of play, but the play that has the most benefits for developing these essential skills, not the soft skills, the essential skills, is dramatic play, where they're working with other kids to figure out a problem. You know, they're working and being creative, they're being persistent, they're focusing, their problem solving. Those are all the skills which are part of self-regulation that come through dramatic play. You know, one of my favorite curriculums for a variety of reasons is the Tools of the Mind
curriculum. Of the Mind.
Because they focus on the importance of dramatic play, laying the foundation again so that they can learn phonics and times tables and all the things that, you know, parents want to do. And you know, another thing I want to bring up is that, you know, it's not only parents that have those expectations. When are you going to teach
do too?
It's the test scores, you know, the politicians that think test scores are the be all end all. And that's not, I love using this as an example. My 39-year-old daughter is probably going to cringe knowing that I'm still talking about her. But she moved between second grade and third grade. So she started third grade in a new school. She was a voracious reader. But her test scores came back like 98% in comprehension, 34% in phonetic skills.
Oh, Lord.
As a good parent, I said during parent-teacher conference, I said, well, what could I do to help my daughter adjust to a new school, a new town, new setting, blah, blah, blah. And she said, well, she didn't do very well in phonics on the test. And I thought for a second, because I'm an educator, I don't want to be intimidating, but I said, well, she already knows how to read, and phonics is a means to learn how to read. It's not the be all end all. Phonics is not our goal. Our goal is reading. And what the research shows is that some children, there's other ways to learn how to read, whether it's sight words, or I asked my mother how I learned to read. She goes, oh, I used to just read to you over and over again. And before I knew it, you were reading. And that is the way many, many children learn to read. But then they learn phonics to pass the test. But it has nothing to do with reading. So again, the teacher education, the parent education, our expectations both as a society for academics versus the essential skills is what I'm advocating for.
So Marcy, yes, absolutely. And before we close, because this has been wonderful, but we haven't someone else coming on, but before we close, I really want to help people understand what play isn't. It is not putting the manipulatives on the table and allowing children to choose where to go. It is not having them rotate every 15 minutes.
All those practices are bad. Yes.
It is children choosing where to go, how long to stay there, who to play with, and teachers facilitating and supporting, not controlling. And so I think that we sometimes think that if we just give them materials and then tell them when to move, I mean, no one can do anything in 15 minutes. That the control that we feel like we need is really creating more issues of behavior in the classroom, because children are being forced to do things they have no interest in doing.
Exactly. I mean,
and so you can really make your classroom run beautifully if you give them time to play.
Yeah, no, again, that can be learned, in teacher education programs and administrators. It's just, this is the thought that went through my mind. I wonder if we presented the idea to administrators and teachers that we're actually creating mass shooters, that, the practices that we're doing are contributing and creating outcomes we do not want as a society.
Well, and I think we could use the mass shooters as one thing, but we could also use people who can't communicate with each other in a socially acceptable way, or people who think violence is the solution to everything, even if they don't go as far as mass shooters.
Exactly.
And so maybe that's the article we need to write, Marcy. How can we prevent these behaviors that we're currently seeing from continuing on?
Right.
15, 20 years from now. I think maybe that's the article we need to write.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Let's get busy. So to learn more about IPA-USA, please visit our website at IPA-USA.org. We have a conference coming up, so you want to make sure that you're looking at the conference and registering for it. It's going to be in San Antonio, Texas. And then please join us on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel so that you get to see and hear a new Porch Play Chat every Monday. Until next time, thanks, Marcy. Until next time, keep on playing.